July 1942. Deep in the Polish forest, 100 kilometers northeast of Warsaw, a railway platform appeared where none should exist. No scheduled stops, no passenger services. Only cattle cars arrived daily, packed with humanity. The passengers who stepped onto that platform never left. Within 3 hours of arrival, not a labor camp, not a prison, a factory designed for a single product, death. And it operated with the efficiency of German engineering applied to the darkest purpose human minds ever conceived. Before its closure, 13 months later, approximately 870,000 people would be murdered there. That's more than Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined, more than the entire population of San Francisco. All killed in a space smaller than 30 football fields, all erased in just over 1 year. How does a facility murder thousands daily without leaving evidence? What kind of personnel execute this operation? And why, when defeat loomed, did they destroy everything? The answers reveal the most terrifying capability of human civilization, the ability to industrialize murder, to transform killing from an act of passion or warfare into a standardized administrative procedure with schedules, quotas, and quality control measures. Treblinka began unremarkably November 1941. A forced labor camp beside a gravel quarry, the location had advantages. A 6-kilometer railway branch connected to the Malkania-Seedles line, existing infrastructure, remote position surrounded by dense forest, perfect isolation. The prisoners, mainly Jews and Poles, extracted gravel for road construction under SS Obersturmführer Theodor van Eupen, a Dusseldorf jurist who traded law books for a whip. The camp operated simply: wooden barracks, watchtowers, 2-meter barbed wire fence, 20 German SS officers, 100 Ukrainian auxiliary guards trained at Treblinka camp. This small contingent maintained iron discipline. Any violation meant public execution. Rations consisted of watered soup and rationed bread. Of approximately 20,000 prisoners who passed through Treblinka between 1941 and 1944, at least half died from grueling labor, malnutrition, or unsanitary conditions. But Treblinka was merely a prologue, a test site, because in December 1941, high-ranking Nazi officials gathered at a lakeside villa in Wannsee, a Berlin suburb. There, over 90 minutes, they finalized administrative procedures for what they euphemistically termed the final solution. The plan required infrastructure, facilities, processing centers. Operation Reinhard, named after Reinhard Heydrich, architect of the final solution, would systematically exterminate the Jews of the general government of occupied Poland. SS Obergruppenführer Odilo Globoknik received command. He needed locations. Treblinka's remote position, railway connection, and administrative experience made it ideal. June 1942, construction began on Treblinka 2, 1.5 miles from the original labor camp. The premise was radically different. No exploitation of labor. No extended detention, just systematic elimination of entire populations. The Belgic model served as the basis, but with operational improvements. Optimized victim flow, increased gas chamber capacity, greater efficiency in body disposal. Construction progressed rapidly, less than 1 month. On July 23, 1942, the first transport arrived from Warsaw Ghetto. The industrial process of death had begun. Initial leadership fell to SS Hauptsturmführer Imfried Ebor, a doctor from the Action T4 forced euthanasia program. But his management proved chaotic even by Nazi standards. Bodies piled without proper processing. Transports suffered delays. The stench became unbearable. Globoknik replaced him in September 1942 with Franz Stangl, who had demonstrated criminal efficiency at Sobibor. Stangl brought order to chaos. Under his command, Treblinka transformed into the second deadliest killing center of the Holocaust. Surpassed only by Auschwitz-Birkenau, Treblinka covered approximately 17 hectares, carefully isolated by natural walls of densely planted trees and barbed wire fences covered with interwoven branches. This visual isolation served dual purposes: prevent outside observation, prevent victims from understanding their fate before reaching the gas chambers. The operational structure followed a functional model divided into 3 main sectors, creating constant unidirectional flow from arrival to death Each phase is optimized to maximize the number processed while minimizing resources and evidence. The reception area, known as the lower camp, represented the entry point. One of the most sinister aspects was the meticulous recreation of a conventional railway station. Wooden clock, signs, fake ticket booth. This elaborate set maintained the illusion that arrivals had been transferred for labor resettlement, allowing the SS to maintain order without immediate violence. The reception platform, compacted earth embankment lined with wooden sleepers and rail lines, could simultaneously unload 20 to 40 rail, processing 5,000 to 8,000 people per convoy. This design avoided bottlenecks in victim flow. After disembarking, the first segmentation occurred. Men separated from women and children, weak, sick, or elderly people, discreetly separated for direct execution in the lazaret, a space disguised as a medical facility, but actually a firing squad area. The next phase employed sanitary pretext. Victims ordered to surrender all valuables and strip naked. In separate barracks, identity documents, money, jewelry, watches, clothing, shoes, even prosthetics and glasses were methodically collected. These belongings were sorted, transported to warehouses, eventually sent to Germany. This systematic looting had its own accounting within the camp. Between reception and extermination areas sat the administrative zone, SS officers' living quarters, Ukrainian guards, staff infirmary. Barely 30 German officers and around 100 auxiliary guards operated the entire machinery of death. The most heavily guarded area was the upper camp, accessible only to Sonderkommando prisoners, gas technicians, and SS supervisors. Here were the gas chambers, burial pits, incineration ditches, and body storage. This area was separated from the rest by a high, dense palisade built of pine branches woven over wire mesh, completely impeding visibility. The most distinctive element was the or road to heaven, a narrow corridor about 100 meters long and 2 meters wide. Flanked by high wooden walls covered with branches and wire, this corridor directly connected disinfection barracks with gas chambers. Its narrowness prevented victims from seeing their destination or returning. Once they began the journey, Treblinka. First lethal facilities consisted of 3 crudely constructed wooden gas chambers with wallpaper lining to simulate showers. Each measured approximately 4 meters wide by 8 meters long with a height of 2.5 meters. Initial total capacity was about 900 people per execution cycle. These chambers soon proved insufficient. In August and September 1942, under orders from SS Scharführer Lorenz Hackenholt and architect Erwin Lambert, both Action T for veterans, a new masonry building was constructed, internally divided into 10 independent chambers. The new structure was considerably more robust, 40-centimeter thick brick walls, reinforced ceilings, doors incorporated industrial rubber seals, fake ventilation grills installed in ceilings to complete the shower illusion. This complex dramatically expanded capacity, allowing up to 3,000 people executed simultaneously in a single 30-minute cycle. The gassing system used captured Soviet diesel engines, typically 12-cylinder V2 models, originally designed for T-34 tanks. These engines operated at low compression, generating large volumes of carbon monoxide. Gases channeled through galvanized steel pipes into sealed chambers, where they rapidly accumulated to lethal concentrations. The heat generated also accelerated hypoxic asphyxiation, shortening completion time. The entire process from entry to death took 20 to 30 minutes, depending on human load and environmental conditions. The railway network formed Treblinka's backbone. The camp connected strategically to the Melchinia-Seedles branch line, which linked to main urban centers where a Jewish population of the general government concentrated. This location allowed direct transport from Warsaw, Radom, Białystok, other cities, even regions as distant as Thessaloniki, Greece. Organization of transports required precise coordination between Deutsche Reichsbahn, German railways, and SS units in charge of deportations. Each operation followed standardized protocol, beginning with concentration of victims at Umschlagplatz or embarkation points, usually located on ghetto outskirts. There, in extremely overcrowded conditions, cattle cars were loaded at 60 to 120 people per unit. Trains arrived at Treblinka daily, sometimes 2 or 3 per day during peak periods. The Great Deportation from Warsaw Ghetto, July 22 to September 21, 1942, marked the climax. During that period, at least 254,000 people were transported from Warsaw, according to railway archives and Judenrat, Jewish Council documentation. Each convoy carried an average of 5,000 to 7,000 people, with peaks of 10,000. Travel times varied considerably, as little as 2 hours from Warsaw, as much as 7 days from Thessaloniki. During these journeys, conditions were inhumane. Sealed wagons lacked water, food, adequate ventilation, or sanitary facilities. Many deportees died during the journey from dehydration, suffocation, or exhaustion. Deportations were also financially cynical. Local Jewish councils were required to cover resettlement transportation costs, including car rental, onboard security, and theoretical passenger support. The fare applied followed a third-class railway travel scheme, with 50% charged for children under 10. Children under 4 not included in practice. Bills included surcharges for special services such as armed guards or sealed cars, raising average cost per person. This charging structure turned communities themselves into forced financiers of their own deportation, an extreme exercise in administrative cynicism. During peak periods, the camp operated virtually. The process followed precise one-way flow: unloading of convoy, separation and crowd control, forced nudity, collection of valuables, transport through Schlau to chambers, gassing transfer of bodies to pits or crematoria. This sequence was calculated to keep the railway platform clear for the next convoy in less than 3 hours, optimizing the facility's genocidal output parallel to physical extermination. Economic plunder operated on industrial scale. Property confiscated from victims was meticulously recorded, classified, and sent to various Reich destinations. Valuables such as watches and jewelry sent to foundries controlled by Reichsbank, money and foreign currency transferred to SS financial departments, clothing and footwear in good condition redistributed to the German civilian population, or army. The scale of systematic looting is staggering. Later documents recovered at Odiloglag Bachnick's trial reveal partial figures. More than 2,700 kilograms of dental gold were extracted at Treblinka. Boxers filled with rings, glasses, watches, and jewelry were regularly shipped to Berlin. The volume of confiscated clothing would have equipped tens of thousands. The daily operation depended on the parallel structure of forced laborers. Jewish prisoners selected directly from arriving transports. Unlike conventional concentration camps with stable inmate populations, Treblinka operated with rotating teams, assigned to specific tasks within the extermination circuit, an average of 700 to 1,000. Prisoners worked simultaneously in various capacities. This represented only a tiny fraction of total deportees, as the vast majority were sent directly to gas chambers. The selection process was entirely pragmatic. During transport unloading, guards identified young, strong men or individuals with specific technical skills: carpenters, shoemakers, tailors, metalworkers, people with language skills necessary to facilitate communication. With deportees of diverse origins once selected, these prisoners entered a compartmentalized system, where each group had specific functions and remained physically separated from others. This segregation maintained operational control and prevented information flow about the camp's overall functioning, hampering potential coordinated resistance. Internal commandos were organized into 5 fundamental operational areas. The Lumpenkommando classified confiscated personal belongings. Between 40 and 60 prisoners meticulously sorted clothing, footwear, suitcases, household items, documents, valuables. The dental Sonderkommando operated in the upper camp. Their task was extracting precious metals, primarily gold and platinum, from corpses' mouths. Using rudimentary tools like pliers, tongs, chisels, they systematically inspected each mouth for valuable teeth. Placed in sealed metal boxes for shipment to Berlin or Lublin, where they were melted down. The body handling commando was largest and faced the most extreme conditions, comprising 200 to 300 prisoners. Their work began once SS doctors confirmed the death of all prisoners inside gas chambers. They opened doors, dragged bodies outside, and temporarily stacked them according to gender, age, And other criteria, specialized technical prisoners included carpenters making tools, transport crates, and minor structural elements for barrack maintenance. Blacksmiths repaired fences, hinges, gate mechanisms, metal structures used in improvised crematoria. Tailors sewed uniforms for auxiliary guards. Shoemakers mended reusable footwear collected from victims. The rotation of Sonderkommandos followed a carefully scheduled routine. Each group operated 4 to 6 weeks, then replaced in stages to avoid accumulating knowledge or bonds between prisoners. Executions of outgoing groups took place in the lazaret sector under administrative or medical prerequisites. That is, the first half of 1943 progressed. Prisoners in Treblinka's internal commands perceived significant changes. Transport frequency gradually decreased. SS officers initiated procedures to eliminate physical evidence of mass extermination, combined with experience of similar camps like Sobibor and Belkik. This led to inescapable conclusion. Treblinka was completing its operational cycle within Operation Reinhard, which would inevitably mean execution of all forced laborers to eliminate witnesses. Faced with this prospect, a corps of prisoners began secretly planning an uprising. The organizing committee formed from individuals with technical skills or relevant military experience. Prominent leaders included Julian Korzystki, a doctor who served in the Polish army; Marceli Galewski, former military officer; Zelo Bloch, Czechoslovak soldier; Eugeniusz Turowski, locksmith, who would prove instrumental in gaining access to the camp arsenal. Planning faced formidable obstacles. Prisoners operated in isolated groups with restricted movement under constant surveillance. Any suspicious behavior meant immediate execution. Despite limitations, the committee established a clandestine network spanning various work commands, taking advantage of the relative mobility of cleaning and maintenance personnel. The operational plan developed over weeks. Objectives were clear: access arsenal to obtain weapons, set fires at strategic points to create confusion, neutralize key guards, facilitate mass escape into surrounding forests. This wasn't conventional insurrection with hopes of military victory, but desperate action to allow at least some to survive to testify about crimes at Treblinka. Technical preparations progressed gradually. Turowski, using his position in the maintenance workshop, managed to make a duplicate key to the weapons depot from surreptitiously obtained wax print. Other conspirators working in belongings sorting systematically diverted small quantities of useful items: knives, scissors, metal tools, glass bottles. A crucial element was gradual accumulation of flammable materials. Small quantities of gasoline and oil stolen from vehicles and generators hidden in containers concealed under barracks. Rudimentary incendiary devices made using glass bottles, fuel, rags, carefully concealing materials at various points throughout camp. The date chosen was August 2, 1943, a Monday. This choice was deliberate. Mondays typically saw fewer transports, reducing guard presence on reception platforms. Furthermore, several SS officers would often leave briefly to bathe in Bug River during the afternoon, temporarily weakening the chain of command. The time set was 4 p.m. When intense heat reduced vigilance and most of the day's work had already been completed, however, an unforeseen incident disrupted the planned sequence. At approximately 3:45 p.m., a Ukrainian guard intercepted a prisoner hiding money in a belongings sorting area. Ensuing interrogation threatened to reveal aspects of the plot, forcing organizers to move up the uprising. At 3:50 p.m., an emergency signal was given. A grenade stolen from the arsenal was thrown at the main administrative building. Events unfolded rapidly. Between 3:51 and 4:10, simultaneous fires broke out in several camp parts. Flames quickly spread to staff barracks and registration offices, where documentation on transports and casualties were stored. Groups of prisoners attacked isolated guards, using improvised weapons and a few firearms obtained from the arsenal. Watchtowers responded immediately, opening fire indiscriminately on areas where movement was detected. Simultaneously, a group managed to partially cut through the camp's rear fence, creating an escape point for hundreds of inmates who desperately ran into adjacent woods. Between 4:30 and 7 o'clock, fire had spread considerably, generating dense smoke, hampering visibility and Nazi response coordination. Alarms sounded continuously. SS managed to establish radio communication with external units requesting urgent reinforcements. Mobile patrols quickly organized around camp to intercept fugitives. The SS response was decisive. At least 3 watchtowers equipped with MG-34 machine guns maintained continuous fire on open areas. Mobile groups composed of SS and Tronicky, armed with Mauser rifles and dogs, began systematically patrolling the perimeter and nearby forest roads. For the next few hours, an intense manhunt unfolded in the surrounding forests. Military vehicles with loudspeakers combed nearby villages, warning the local population against providing aid to fugitives under penalty of death. The quantitative assessment reveals both magnitude and limitations. Of approximately 840 prisoners present that day, between 300 and 400 managed to escape during the riot. However, during immediate escape, between 100 and 150 were shot down by gunfire from watchtowers or pursuing patrols. In following days, between 150 and 200 were recaptured in woods and summarily executed. Only 60 to 70 survived until war's end, taking refuge with partisan units or hidden by local residents who defied German orders. Material damage to the camp was significant, though it didn't destroy basic operational capacity. Fire consumed part of the clothing storehouse, some administrative offices, and partially damaged the communications system. However, central extermination facilities, particularly gas chambers, were not substantially affected. Despite this, the uprising's strategic impact was decisive. A few weeks later, SS High Command in Lublin, assessing security risks and considering the camp had fulfilled its primary function, ordered its definitive closure. When Treblinka's extermination machinery had achieved its primary objective, having eliminated most Jewish communities in the general government of Poland, Nazi authorities faced new challenges, erasing all physical traces of their crimes. This process, officially known as Action 1005, represented systematic effort to eliminate material evidence of genocide, anticipating possible future investigations. If Germany lost the war, conceptualization came directly from the highest Nazi hierarchy levels. Heinrich Himmler, Reichsführer and chief Holocaust architect, personally authorized the operation in July 1943. The immediate trigger was German forces. Discovery of Caden mass graves where thousands of Polish officers had been executed by Soviet NKVD. This discovery, which Germans used extensively for propaganda, raised concerns that military setback would allow Allies to uncover similar evidence of Nazi crimes. Local implementation at Treblinka was directed by camp's last commandant, Kurt Franz, following the August 2nd uprising, which accelerated the decision to permanently close the extermination camp. Franz received specific orders to eliminate all physical traces. The first phase consisted of physical destruction of facilities. Gas chambers, epicenter of extermination, were blown up using explosives strategically placed at structural points. Controlled charges systematically demolished roofs, walls, foundations. Debris was removed and scattered to make future identification difficult. Dismantling extended to all camp structures. Barracks where victims' belongings were sorted completely dismantled. Railway platform, administrative buildings, watchtowers, perimeter fences dismantled. Recyclable materials transported to other camps or used in defensive fortifications against Soviet advance. Of approximately 870,000 victims, most bodies had been buried in enormous mass graves during the first year of operations. Beginning 1943, the cremation process had begun, but hundreds of thousands of buried bodies still needed to be exhumed and burned to eliminate evidence. Methodology was technically sophisticated. Mechanical excavators and cranes brought from Lublin and Malkinia opened mass graves. Bodies in various decomposition states were extracted and temporarily stored. Approximately 300 prisoners worked continuous shifts, day and night, in conditions later described as indescribable due to stench and advanced decomposition. For mass cremation, huge pyres were built using railroad tracks placed on brick pillars about 5 meters high, forming incineration grates, layers of corpses and wood placed on these structures with fuels added to maintain combustion. Each pyre could hold between 1,500 and 2,000 bodies and burned continuously for 2 or 3 days. The process was optimized over time, operating up to 6 pyres simultaneously with an estimated capacity of 12,000 bodies per day. However, cremation didn't completely eliminate all remains. Charred bones and fragments were removed manually and processed by grinding. Mallets, metal rollers, occasionally specific machines pulverized these remains into tiny fragments. The resulting ashes underwent various final treatments, some mixed with soil and distributed across the countryside. Others are buried in new, deeper trenches. Some are thrown directly into the Bug River. Truckloads were transported to be scattered in remote forest areas. Once cremation completed, the site underwent complete physical redevelopment to eliminate all visual traces. The surface where gas chambers and graves were located was leveled with fresh soil. Saplings, primarily firs and poplars, planted in irregular patterns to simulate natural growth. Rye, lupin, and wildflowers were planted throughout the former camp as a final camouflage element. A small farmhouse with a wooden hut was built, housing Ukrainian peasants. Its presence intended to lend credibility to the official narrative that the site had never housed a killing center, but had always been a conventional agricultural area. This cover-up operation was completed in approximately 6 weeks, ending October 1943. To a casual observer, or even from the air, the area appeared ordinary rural land with no distinctive features. The final phase included elimination of last witnesses. Prisoners who worked on dismantling and cremation were transferred to other camps and subsequently executed. SS personnel and auxiliary guards were mostly reassigned to the Eastern Front or other concentration camps. Dispersing those directly involved, however, despite meticulous efforts, cover-up didn't fully achieve its objective. July 26, 1944, advanced Red Army units entered the region after liberating nearby Malkenia railway station. The site of the former camp was inspected by specialized Soviet and Polish commissions. Despite elaborate Nazi camouflage, investigators found significant evidence. Thousands of bone fragments and human teeth remained scattered throughout the ground, surfacing especially after heavy rains. Numerous, partially charred, personal belongings found: buttons, utensils, combs, dentures. Further exploration revealed remains of rails and metal structures buried superficially. As well as ash deposits in covered pits, expert reports concluded that, although gas chambers had been destroyed, disposition of remains and location of trenches confirmed systematic extermination process. These physical findings, combined with testimony of few uprising survivors, made it possible to gradually reconstruct magnitude and methods of genocide perpetrated at Treblinka. On the site of Treblinka II, an impressive memorial commemorates victims. Thousands of upright stones resembling tombstones symbolize annihilated Jewish communities. In the center, a large cracked granite structure represents gas chambers and irreparable fragmentation of civilization. That allowed such atrocities, this memorial not only honors those who perished there, but stands as a lasting testament to Nazi efforts to erase their crimes from human memory, and to the inescapable truth that evil, once committed on such a scale, can never be fully erased.